Okay, my friends, this is Roger Spur. I am going to present a series on mythology and what it really is in reality. So, let's get started. From now on, pretty much all you're ever going to see is my screen. Because I present evidence. Alright, let's talk. Okay, my friends, so as I said, this kicks off the series. This will be part one. It's going to be a slow, methodical foray into what has been missed. And this is actually kind of an emotional thing for me because I'm going back to when I first originally started this research close to 15 years ago. And it's been a struggle, I'm going to tell you that right now. And I was so frustrated when I wrote this book. It was Mudfossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. Now this was put out in 2016, January 2016. And I had presented all my evidence to all the universities, literally all of them, specifically Yale because they're right down the street. But I was very, very frustrated at this time. And it had taken an emotional toll on me, devastated my relationships. Let me just start with what I wrote about my book. And it is on Amazon. It's only 99 cents. And I put it up there just because I wanted Velikovsky to be remembered, because he was destroyed by the people that are destroying me. Same people. They haven't changed their stripes. Now, here's what it says. This is what I wrote. The discovery of mud fossils a few years ago led me on a journey only can be described as wild and crazy. Man, you ain't lying about that. The evidence uncovered is discussed and many links to videos that prove the claims I made. And this is 2016. This is January 20, well, they're saying February 8th, 2016. It was actually out earlier than that. But anyway, let's say February of 2016. Because guess what happened? After I did all my research about my mud fossils, guess who else published? The same people that I presented to. Derek Briggs. They published exceptionally preserved soft body creatures promoted by a worldwide layer. They don't understand how the fossils were preserved, but I do. I presented all this to them, and then they wrote the paper almost a year later, in November of 2016, taking credit for my work. I don't think that's very laudable. Now, at this time, I am really upset, so I published this book. Hundreds of samples were eventually completely scrutinized, many scientifically tested in a variety of ways. DNA tests were positive for human DNA, 3 different tests. And 2 of them were giants. That's what freaked them out. They just went crazy. Called me a creationist and then it just started, slaughtered me. Contamination was ruled out, and they're available to be tested again. All negative control tests were in fact negative for contamination. We had 7 CAT scans showed exquisite vascular and bone details in DNA-proven specimens. 1 would have been over 50-foot tall giant fingertip, and another verified fingertip was from a human giant which would be around 200 feet tall. In addition, there was lots of chemistry and lab work I had done. I know exactly the process, and I know what feldspar is made of, and it's the collagens. Anyway, we're going to get into all this stuff. I created the chemical process of mud fossilization. I know exactly how it works. I'm being ignored when not attacked because reality is still not a concern in academia. This is how I was really upset then. At least 60 years has been the practice. It's been at least 60 years has been their practice, as done with Velikovsky's research. The mud fossil specimens I present are physical support for Emanuel Velikovsky's historical masterpiece of 1950. Velikovsky read, studied, and listened. All right, Velikovsky read everything that was written in the past from every culture. He studied, he listened, he documented, and then he wrote the book, and then he was destroyed. The stories were the same all over the globe, everywhere around the world. The entire globe had the same stories of this side of the world, this side of the world, same stories that happened worldwide. It was an event which was the Great Flood. Now, there was more than one flood, so don't get me wrong, there wasn't just one flood. But the one that I am going to focus on is what I believe caused all of these soft-bodied creatures. And so does Yale. So does Yale. You see it right here. Huh? Exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures. From a where is that? Rapid precipitation facilitated by high silicate saturates oceans. The ocean's one worldwide layer. And they're doing big studies on this now to try to understand what's going on. I know everything about it, and they still won't talk to me. This is what really upsets me, and it still upsets me because, I mean, it's been 15 years of trying to deal with Yale, and Yale specifically is the one that I point out didn't do their job. If they're supposed to be trying to understand, and they won't engage with somebody who does understand and has the specimens and wants to show them to them, and they won't look at them, that's not right. Do you think it's right? I don't think so. That's why I wrote this book. So don't forget, now it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's only 99 cents. And I had 3 DNA tests, 7 CAT scans, presented all this stuff to Yale, wouldn't take any account of it, and then they wrote their paper about a year later saying, yep, all that stuff's true, but we discovered it. Well, that's not true. That appears to be what they did. They didn't give me any credit anywhere, and I had presented all this stuff to the same people that are taking credit for it, so I don't think that's right. Now, the stories were the same all over the globe. The same events happened, and the dates were the same, and they were observed by many and recorded by eyewitnesses at the time of the occurrences. All right? We dismiss these recorded historical documents as silly, scary stories, not at all rooted in reality. Scary stories, yes. Silly, no. Reality, absolutely. Velikovsky was literally attacked, and that will stop right now. Well, no, it didn't. Academic bullies and book burners are about to be exposed in these pages. Now the fun begins. Well, it hasn't been fun yet. I wish he was here now. I do wish he was here now, because he was destroyed by the same people that are working against me and against you to support their own benefit of using you for an income, basically. And this was all written in the ancient texts, too. I'm going back to the ancient texts now because there's very little I'm finding in there that's not true. We all laughed at it. Oh, these people must be crazy. They're giants, monsters, dragons. Yeah, well, guess what? Not so silly anymore. Okay, my friends, this is what I wrote originally in my book, 2016. It's still only 99 cents. I am going to have to write another book because some of the stuff I talk about here, I discovered wasn't right, or there's additions to it. There's all kinds of changes. And so, and I want to incorporate all my research into one book. But anyway, it won't be expensive, and I just want it to be recorded before I lose my mind, which could be any day now. Now, this was my introduction to Mudfossil, Velikovsky, and Minds in Collision. Now, I portray it as a dream. Well, here's what I said. I had a dream that there were giants all over the earth. They were as tall as mountains. Then all of a sudden, Jupiter gave birth to Venus in the normal vaginal way, and the afterbirth spewed into space and fell on earth as red powdered blood and stones and milk and honey during the Exodus. There was giant chunks of meat in space, 750,000 times bigger than us, and I will show you that. Comets of meat streaming barbecue gases as they flew by. That's what the comas are, and that's only when they come into the sunshine and they get cooked. And that's why the astronaut suits smelled like steak in space. Meteors have veins and arteries. You can see them inside the metal meteors because they're hearts. Water had a memory, and light was actually a fluid, which it is. The sun fed the solar system with electrons, which it does. What a dream. Well, yeah, it's not a dream, it's reality. Then suddenly I woke and realized that I had been dreaming. The dream, though, was actually reality, and reality I had been living my entire life was the actual dream. What am I saying? The meat in space, living universe dream is reality, and the everyday reality we are fed is an unreal fantasy. You are living in a fantasy world right now, my friend. A constructed universe very much like a dream, as far as I can determine. Okay, so you decide for yourself. Which universe do you live in? Do you think you're living in reality right now? Everything you do today and everything you've been taught was reality? Which reality? Or does it even matter? Maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe you're perfectly happy, deluded. I call that PhD. Some of us are just now waking up from a dream that we thought was reality, and crazy as it seems, the real universe has meat in space. I will show you that. Rivers of milk and fields of honey from the byproducts of planetary birth 3,500 years ago. All these things fell on Earth at that time of the Exodus, which was just as this disaster was occurring. What planet was it? It was Venus. There was much blood and tissues from the living birth of Venus from Jupiter's red spot, which is a vagina, and it appears that it might be ready to give birth again. I will show you that as well. We're going to go deep into this, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's no question that's a vagina. Anyway, everything is living. According to me, everything is living according to my research. There's nothing that was never living. It was hinted at by Velikovsky, an ancient text describing these events, and I can tell you the physical evidence leaves virtually no doubt as to the reality of our ancestors' words. When it dawned on me that living planets and meat are space objects, and comets are steaks cooking in the sunshine, and astronauts say after a walk, my suit smells like seared steak, I knew that would change lots of stuff, but was I in for an awakening? Truth is, when I started looking into things, I found to my surprise, I could not believe literally anything that was being taught to me, because nobody realized the planetary things and the earth below our feet are all living things, completely life-oriented. The observable physical evidence is always my source. I'm a material scientist. Observable physical evidence is always my source. Facts only for me. This I had to close, question everything. It's still up there. They got 77,000 people. It didn't work out for me because anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's a real bad memory. Anyway, I said I would present lots of evidence from the fossils, the sinkholes, atomic physics, and all that stuff, and then it got taken over by flat Earth people, and it just became absolute nonsense. And there was no space and everything, and they just attacked everything I did because I wouldn't go along with a flat Earth. So that upset me a lot. That's why I became very bitter at that group of people, because they just laughed at me, and I became a real laughingstock. So I had to close all that stuff up. Anyway, there's much more to mud fossils than simply curiosity. This is no monkey bone. The following statement represents the essence of the clear and present dangers we face as a world, as a society, and as moral human beings. Life is no longer only for the living, because the dead things are not dead. They are sleeping. All things are life, and life demands respect to get respect. Respect from whom? From us. Respect for what? Everything from our neighbors to the living earth to the living universe. We must do this for harmony and the good things that flow from harmony. The earth is a living creature. Well, there is no creature that will not defend itself from assaults by those who disrespect, exploit, dominate, oppress, or destroy. Who does not defend themselves from that? The earth is a creature, it will defend itself. Could the earth be turning on us as we have on it? Are we turning on ourselves for these reasons? And then this was the book, 1/1/2016. I started to write the book. And there's another, well, hold on one second. You know what, for today, I think I'll just read you the beginning of my book. And again, you buy it for 99 cents, so if you want to read it, good. Now, here's how I said, without an open mind, you are doomed here between these pages. I hope you find this compelling in a number of ways. Just a suggestion. When wild claims backed by something physical that can be easily validated or debunked and could be quite meaningful drags you in a most compelling way, I suggest you follow. See where you are being dragged, with both your own eyes and your own mind wide open, not being told what to think, not being directed, not being dictated to. Look, think, determine, conclude. You will know whether you should go away or stay. Stay watching my stuff or go somewhere else. It's up to you. If you are told not to go, then you should know to go there fast. Because they're going to tell you, don't listen to that. And that's exactly what they said. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you something later about how these PhDs are just nasty about the giants and stuff that I presented. And even still to this very day. They don't like it because it turns everything on its head and it changes everything they've been telling you, and that's just a fact. Now, you will know whether you should go away or stay. If you are told not to go, you should go there fast and probably stay there, because the bridge and the books will soon be burned. They are trying to burn my bridge and my books right now. I can tell you that. I am so obscured. Very few people know any of my research at all. Now, let me hold on. All right, this is from Velikovsky's archivist. It says, I have been asked by the compilers of the Velikovsky archive to briefly describe the present condition of Velikovsky's unpublished works, entitled In the Beginning. As Velikovsky explains, parts of this volume were already completed in the 40s and originally formed part of Worlds in Collision. The present manuscript also incorporates material written for a volume entitled The Test of Time, which dealt with the new information on the planets coming from the space probes. Because he was before any of the space probes. He went back and found out what they had written early in history. Now, and so this is all stuff coming in now, new stuff, so that he can find out from the space probes, which prove he was right about a lot of things, and contain frequent allusions to the earlier catastrophes. This work will probably never see publication. They destroyed him. Whoops. You will soon be aware of this author's effort to rectify this, and I absolutely will, which is me. I will absolutely rectify this about Velikovsky. And you're going to see he has started to become seen again. He was gone. Nobody knows anything about him. I hope Mudfossils changes this. Justice is done and reality becomes reality. This is the Velikovsky archives. I am a Mudfossil researcher that led in many compelling directions, which I followed. Mudfossils have been completely scientifically verified in every possible way. They were discovered in Middletown, Connecticut in the early 2000s. And I say I really can't remember when I started. It was years before that, but it was 2016 now as the book is being published. Since then, many thousands of mud fossils have been discovered and completely researched all over the world. I have had DNA and CAT scans tested, performed, which completely validated specimens, DNA, CAT scans, all this stuff. These are anatomically, sometimes perfectly preserved, exact copies of the original creature's body part. Only body parts have been found so far, but they are plentiful and exquisitely detailed in most cases. Some are giant humans that have been DNA tested conclusively, 100% mitochondrial DNA human, modern human. Mud fossils are primarily a result of massive devastation and copious amounts of creatures dead at the same time, exactly as a year later, Yale agrees. Preservation is excellent due to mud and wet conditions during the Great Flood. Mud is nothing more than deteriorated flesh. So if you have organs like this, hold on. If you have organs like this, what happened was they don't realize this flood was from a hot water flood of Venus almost impacting Earth. That's the key. And it parboiled all the creatures and basically boiled the flesh off them and turned it into mud. And then there's a process called nucleophilic substitution. All of this I did. At this time, it was all done. I had everything done. And that's why they came out so good. And it's because the nucleophilic substitution causes the feldspar to turn into aluminum silicates. How's that for you? We're going to get deep, but let me just finish up with this. Only body parts are found, and even new, this is like a new species. These are no-toes. The toes are built in. This is not a shoe. This is a no-toe, and they have springs inside instead of bones. Again, no interest from academia. So don't think academia is going to do anything for you. All they're interested in is preserving their status and their authority to tell you what to do and to pay them to tell you what you have to say. And even Caesar here, I asked him the other day, he knows. No, good. He says, come fly with me, come back to reality. See, Caesar died flat like that too. They all died flat like that because of the flood. That's the Anacarta biota that Yale discovered a year after I showed them it. I took the blood right out of here. You get raw blood. You drill right down inside there. You get absolute raw blood out of these. You can't get blood out of a stone. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, all of these things I had tested. Right? They're anatomically perfectly preserved, exact copies of the original body part, just like that lung. If any doctor, any medical student, any kid with an anatomical book sees this and they can see the pleura of the lung, which is this rubbery substance, and that is flat as a pancake because it died in the flood too, which they all did. All my stuff. And it's all on top of the surface of the Earth. So don't tell me it was 550 million years ago, like Yale's saying. This is on the surface. I didn't dig for any of this stuff. I just picked it up. And people are picking them up all over the world. And wait till you find out the end of this story. You're going to flip. Because I did. And it only happened a couple of days ago. This is going to be fun. Now, mud fossils are primarily a result of a massive devastation, copious amounts of creatures dead at the same time. As Yale agrees, preservation is excellent due to the conditions, as Yale agrees. This is written about in all ancient myths and historical texts and heard by all. Nobody had a different story. Yes, I said wet conditions preserve much better than sandy soils, wet muds. And sandy is what Yale's talking about. They're trying to take credit for this and saying it was sandy casts. No, sand is no good for that. It's mud is just like it being in its own still flesh. It doesn't know any difference. Mud is just nothing more than flesh that's eroded. So soils and researchers are looking for scraps, and mud is where the meat is. And of course, outer space as well. Mud is where the meat is, and of course, outer space as well. I forgot I wrote all this stuff. I got to be honest with you. I'm just reading it now for the first time in years. Dry soils destroy the fascia and material that wants wetness. You keep it wet, it's just like being in your body, because you're a watery creature. The granular nature of porous, sandy soils allows oxygen to invade, destroys it. Hold on. All right, oxygen is the primary reduction agent in organic decomposition. The fossil researchers have simply not bothered to look in wet soils because they assumed it would destroy and rot organic matter. Here's the really funny thing, the scientists are right. Dead stuff in the air in moist conditions rots and goes away to zero quickly. It just becomes part of the substrate. Did you see air in the last sentence? In the air. Okay, goes away to zero quickly. Did you see air? You won't see air or oxygen when you talk mud fossils. Decomposition in the air for sure makes things disappear, but not in mudslide victims. And the entire earth was a virtual mudslide after the Great Flood. Now I realize there's much more to it than that. So then I said I had a dream. I had a dream there were giants, and that's when I started talking about having giants and all of this stuff coming out of space from the birth of Venus, from the red spot on Jupiter, who is the god Zeus, and gave birth to the fiery comet Venus. Exactly what was written in history. All right, I talk about the dream, then I say suddenly I woke and realized the place that I was in the dream, the living universe dream place, was reality, and the dead universe we were fed was dream. Like I said, everything's just dead out there, just rocks, nothing was ever alive. If the universe is alive, and it is, it seems we are murdering our host, the Earth. Velikovsky was so right. And I have the physical proof now that supports his historical record exactly, and with chemicals and specimens this time, not empty theories. He had theories, but he couldn't support them with physical, which I can. Maybe time for others to wake up. I am lonely. I'm telling you, it was a tough time for about 5 years. Well, it's still tough. Why is this mud fossil thing just now being found? Why? These are all over the earth. It's not like there's just one or two of them. They're everywhere you go. And every single one I have tried, I could say in 15 minutes, you can find mud fossils if you look. And I have never had one person not be able to find them. And the things that they have found are amazing. And I told you a few minutes ago that something is going to stun you. That's what happened. In 15 minutes, this woman went out and found something that is just going to blow your mind. Because it did mine. All right. Mud fossils have just been ignored. It's just too spectacular. I fully understand the spectacular nature of my claims. Examination is what I ask from educators. I just want them to examine. I am sure many in the past made the same claims I do, but were destroyed by being so feeble-minded to even consider such thoughts. They say, oh, you're just an idiot, and finally you give up. And it's been 15 years, so I'm not giving up. I base that last statement on precedents. Immanuel Velikovsky and my experiences and many others. I focus on Velikovsky here because the claims he made are really exciting, and his denigration so public and vicious. And Carl Sagan was one of the nastiest. He was such an arrogant, incompetent scientist. Sagan was. By the way, Immanuel, it's with an I. Now, Velikovsky was open-minded and such a great researcher, so far out there on a limb leading to reality that it was too much for the dominators and bullies in academia. But not for me, because I live in the real universe, by myself almost. If Velikovsky was still alive, he would be my neighbor, and he would be my friend. When I refer to a friend, I really mean it is not possible to speak to someone in a dead universe. They talk of the Big Bang and CERN and matter and its dust and dead, never alive rocks and particles. I know it's just not correct. So I speak up. Result, one less friend. You can't speak about this and keep your friends. People know this. I started with less than most friends, and now I have less than even I thought possible. When you read Velikovsky, you understand how to scream Yahoo can stop all of us from being crushed. It worked in the past. Find what I speak of in his great historical work. This is, what do I mean by that? See, now I can't even remember what I meant by saying Yahoo. Anyway, find what I speak of in his great historical work. This is the link to his Worlds in Collision work of 1950. Absolute masterpiece. It was 11 weeks, #1 on the bestseller list, and forced by the publishers to pull it off the bookshelves. Literal book burners, because academia said, we'll never buy another book from you. This was Macmillan booksellers. And they said, well, we're going to stop selling the book because academia says they don't like you. Imagine that? It was #1 on a book 11 weeks in a row. So, and you can read the accolades and then think of the misery they put this guy through. They just destroyed him for the whole rest of his life. And now he was going to be lost in history. That's why I wrote this book, and that's why I made only 99 cents. Now, news flash to academia. Things change, and learning requires examination of unexpected discoveries. That is also academic fraud if they will not examine unexpected discoveries with vigorous scrutiny. That's what academia is supposed to do. And academic fraud says if they deny examining it, that's fraud. Why? Because you in academia are now selling and teaching what has been proven to be incorrect. These physical specimens I refer to are completely validated using the latest, most severe scientific standards. This is the DNA test that showed all right, so one day you realize in a flash you just woke up basically to realize I've been duped, and saw that the actual real universe was living and the dead universe was a bad dream. Time to wake up, because this is the reality of the situation, and as far as I'm concerned, there's an eternity, and you better be able to deal with it, and you better look for truth. My claim here is that the physical evidence supports what Velikovsky says was written at the time the events occurred all over the globe. Once again, the new knowledge is scorned and ignored and maligned, and the bringer is attacked, who is moi, but the evidence is not possible to attack, so they have retreated. And then taken credit for it, actually. And then that paper was kind of slid under, as far as I'm concerned, because I didn't even know about it until actually a few months ago. So I was attacked. But this will be resolved because the physical evidence is undeniable. It's not spelled right. But it is my nature to understand who feels what and why. I can put myself in any shoes, and I understand why they were upset and why they fought back against it. And it's a direct attack on their life, basically, because their life is based around what they have been told to teach kids. Now they have to start over again. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of the kids are smarter than the teachers. So they're scared to death. I don't blame them. I would be too. And not only that, the text is written about teachers concocting stories and taking advantage of the kids, and how their destruction does not sleep is not good. Now, so anyway, it's my nature to try to understand, and I understand why they're doing what they're doing, but somehow you got to stand up above that, and I'm fairer than the ones I encounter who despise me. In general, it seems. In these other despisers' shoes, facts are the only consideration, as I like myself better than most despisers and consider my IQ to be substantially higher than the low double digits. So I looked for reasons. All right, so here's what happened. I always try to find a reason, and I did. My research is a death nail to the science that is currently accepted, multiple death nails. Academia is not pleased and despises me. Mudfossils literally destroy science through blood and guts, living universe not recently taught in my neighborhood. Veins and arteries in all rocks and meteors and comets meet in space. This news is not well received. It obviously will make some feel foolish, I suppose, but that is not my goal. I make jokes and pokes at the ones responsible, the bullies, but this is a simple matter of being truthful. It's as simple as that. Everyone asks, why don't I get Yale or someone to look at my claims? And Yale is only less than 30 minutes away from me, and they've refused, although they took credit for these soft-bodied creatures being petrified perfectly. Now, among the tests performed were 3 DNA tests that were positive for human DNA, and it was 100% certain, 100% base pairs according to the lab, 100% match, all negative controlled negative, large quantities of DNA. All right, here it is right here. It says the large quantities of the DNA. The other results, it cannot be challenged. I mean, I went deep inside. I didn't take it off the surface. I know what I'm doing. I'm under very, very careful conditions. I extracted it, sent it to the lab, and the body parts are virtually perfect, and they are available to be tested by anybody that wants to fight me. All right, so I had large quantities of DNA, and they can't be challenged. Yale refuses to examine my evidence for years. I was trying to get them, and I did everything they asked me to do. We had stuff CAT scanned down where they told us to take it down to University of Texas, Austin. That was an absolute nightmare. And then we had to I had everything done at 2016, a year before Yale did their job. It took credit for. They are only 15 minutes down the road, basically, you know, on a good day. Completely ignored by Yale and all others in academia, 100% of them. And the reason why is because everyone I asked to look at it after Yale refused said, well, you're right down the street from Yale. Why don't you take it to Yale? I said, they won't look at it. I said, well, they say, okay, see you later, idiot. They said, well, if Yale won't look at it, obviously we're not going to look at it. You must be just a moron. Yale was, I never saw anything like it. I was just stunned, and I still am to this day. They can get away with this. All other academia I tried to communicate with, many dozens. I am not like there, I think. DNA was found in large quantities of positive human, and some were giants. You would think this discovery would be challenged, scrutinized, wouldn't you? I did. But it was a little too much, and why? These were giant human remains, some that were DNA tested from a deep vascular fracture I created with a steel chisel and carefully prepared the specimens. I actually whacked off a chunk, got down inside where the blood was. The lab was Helix Biolabs Analytic in Michigan. Absolutely fabulous work, and a big, very, very detailed report. I worked closely with the owner and was deeply involved with the process and took a course on genomics at Johns Hopkins so that I could really speak with true knowledge about this. My professor was Stephen Salzberg. I was thrilled because he was an expert in ancient DNA, he told me. However, the thrill wears off quickly. The course was very good about the physical molecular coding and makeup of DNA. Professor Salzberg was very good at responding to my questions during the course. We emailed about his work on mammoths and such, and it was very interesting. I mentioned T-Rex blood that was being discussed, and he related to me that the T-Rex blood controversy was simply bad science, and he had apparently was involved in exposing the bad science was his statement. He actually said it was bad science, and I actually exposed it. So I said, when I asked Salzberg from Johns Hopkins, I was taking to comment on my work, I sent him several of my papers, videos, 3 DNA tests, CAT scans in one email. I received my answer in 8 minutes. He is very responsive. Complete dismissal in an impossible, etc. Very must be, can't be, impossible, would be. But he obviously did not give much scrutiny in his 8 minutes to dismiss years of work and scientific lab results in 8 minutes and compose a good-sized dismissal and quite demeaning. Same responses from every single one of these people. No interest in looking at anything other than what they spout out, and they force and demand. And if a student was to bring this to his attention, I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee anything of that nature, but in my opinion, he would be vindictive. He sounded very vindictive to me, and I was a student of his. All right. Anyways, the T-Rex blood was completely validated, very courageous. I think it left its mark on all those involved, but the dismissers, like the professor, by the way, he has gone dark, as is the practice. He won't relate to me anymore. None of them do. Well, as soon as you present the evidence, done. Never a fact based on my physical research. He offered, as all academics with no answers do, simply opinions that are irrelevant in the case because my real evidence that was scientifically tested beats his guesses. That's my feeling. I have the emails. This is a YouTube discussion on the lab's thoughts on the DNA. This is the DNA report from the lab. Or maybe use this link if you can't get into the academic papers. CAT scans were extremely detailed with the best equipment available. This was from Jesse Garant and Associates. They have two locations, and they do work for Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney and all. I mean, these people got machines can see anything. Anyway, they did 7 CAT scans for me, and they did it at no charge because they knew the validity of my work. And Jesse and Fabio, who I worked with very closely, excellent people. Jesse, Garant, and Associates. Now, the CAT scans were fabulous. More Mudfossil evidence adds up with help from real scientists. The CAT scans were generously donated by a friend of science for sure. Jesse Grant and Associates, Michigan and Canada. They have the equipment to scan more than mushy tissues. They scan racing car engines for defects. I have rocks and details, including vascular works, bone transitions, apical tufts, densities, and all kinds of things. I got to be honest with you. Mud fossils, very, very difficult to really see good details, I would imagine, in anybody's scans, because this is what's called nucleophilic substitution. The stone inside has basically been replaced by the things that are filtering through it. So most of the stone is basically the same stone. It all turns to basically basalt. What you can see, though, is the membranes. That's where you can tell the division between the bone and the flesh that was around it. But the bone itself, well, right here, you see this? This is a bone. And it's basically basalt. Inside is basically basalt. The whole bone has turned to basalt, but it was in mud. Now, this basically is the same thing that Caesar here turned into, basalt. Inside, the membrane protects it. I was originally going to call this fascia-facilitated fossilization, and I think I have on academia.edu, I have some papers called fascia-facilitated fossilization, because that's what it is. The coating is fascia. Even skin, feathers, every membrane, feathers are nothing more than membranes, and there's a membrane around every bone, and membranes around your skin, your everything. And that is what turned to like a plastic bag. And the invasion of the collagens, and there's something in collagen, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it has an affinity to bond with aluminum silicates to form rubber bags. And the contents of the bag, just like this here, is preserved flawlessly. I mean, absolutely flawlessly. You see that? That's literally raw red blood. And I drilled into this somewhere, I forget where. But anyway, this was a long time. It was like 10 years ago almost. Now, the rubber bag on the lung is much cooler than the other, because the other are very thin. This has to be like a really rubbery substance. I got another lung here. Hold on a second. Where do you see this one? You see this one? I just put a little water on it. That's the coating, which is the pleura, the same as that coating there. Only half of it has eroded away. See how thick that rubber bag is that coats your lung? This is not your regular little thin membrane. These are a big, heavy-duty bag, and it goes same thing, flat as a pancake from the flood. Died like that. boiled itself out of some creature's body. This is the strap that they all have on the bottom, which just attaches it to the rest of your body. That was just discovered recently, this little tab here. They all have that on the bottom of their of the lungs. And that is a different type of material. Anyway, this is all, they're all flat on the bottom. One side's flat, and and they agree again. Yale finally published their paper confirming everything I said. So Jesse Garant, thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Fabio. You are the best, my friends. And I told you sooner or later, it hopefully will be known of your interest in science, which is very nice to see nowadays, because it's very rare. But they do scientific work. They actually do the work. These other people are theoretical people. That's the problem. Once they come up with a theory, they will do anything to defend it. I am a material scientist. I have to explain what I see, and I can. I can in every single case. If I can't, I want to know about it. I have answers to everything I see now. If you got something you want answered, let's talk about it. All right, because once this led me on an understanding that nobody cared in academia, nobody cares at Fermilab, nobody cares at CERN, nobody cares at the University of Geneva. I went to the University of Geneva for particle physics, and I presented all my stuff to them. They sounded pretty impressed, but that was as far as it went. Anyway, Jesse, again, thank you, my good friend, and Tom at Helix Biolabs, thank you, my good friend. You've both done magnificent, and it will be understood how well you did. Now, hold on, let's take it a little further, get to the end. All right, so I was talking about Jesse doing race car engines and all this stuff, and then it showed as good as it could show in Mudfossils, because I could see the details. And for me, they're clearly shown. Nicer people cannot be found than these guys I worked with. Better equipment does not exist that I know of. More professional and courteous is not possible. They are a light in the dark for me. And I'm going to tell you, I found a lot of darkness. After bad experience in Texas, that was a nightmare. I contacted them, and my contact was Fabio. Fabio, my good friend, you were the best. Everything I have done was at my expense and literally alone, as nobody thought I was sane for many years. Now, when I say literally at my expense, they donated that. Everything that I did to get my DNA test done, that was a little expensive. All I had to do was pay for the shipping and so forth, and for Fabio and to Jesse Grant and Associates. You know, they were pretty big stuff, kind of heavy, but you know, I spent their money. I bought equipment. I bought a really good microscope. Didn't end up using it. I needed the one I use right now is this one right here. That one there. That one works great. And anyway. This is running long here today, so I'm going to try to finish this up right now. But this is going to be a very long-running series. We need to get back into reality. And I will be writing another book that will consolidate all of my work, and I'm going to try to make it brief, and each one of them like a chapter linked to a video. And I'll make the chapters short, and it's really a simple thing, but you have to open your mind. All right? These people were the absolute best. All right, so, you know, obviously I was doing this all at my own expense, and I'm not rich. Money obviously was an issue. I was talking to experts, extremely technical, expensive equipment run by highly trained specialists. It's not free, not where I come from. Fabio, my good friend Fabio, listened, and I asked for help. Never expecting the wonderful, magnanimous response. Not just one, but 7 expertly done CAT scans, and offered to do what it takes, because these people like reality also. I think 7 is more than can be expected, and it should be more than sufficient to seal this case. And with all the other overwhelming evidence, but a friendly gesture like that is not something that I ever seen before. I fear the rejection and I experience now would be much intolerable, or at least much harder, and it is hard as glass now. You know, even with all the evidence, I figured I'm overwhelming with evidence. Didn't mean anything. Some are seeing the truth. Truth and Roger say thank you to Jesse Grant and Associates, my very good friends. Okay, a little real-life world interruption there, but here I'm saying thank you to Jesse and also Helix Tom. And I also, in my own little lab here, I recreated the organic crystals in the fleshy tissue, which is the mudfossilization process of nucleophilic substitution, in my little lab that I have here. And it took about 6 months or less. So we're not talking thousands of years to make a fossil. And now even, I believe, Yale, Derek Briggs calls the process fossils in a flash or something, somebody was telling me. Apparently he communicates with other people and won't communicate with me. Okay, we're going to wrap it up for today. This is just a start. Don't forget, my work preceded Yale, Derek Briggs, who made this paper in 2016, approximately a year after I had my book out, in extreme frustration, and still no acceptance whatsoever of what I have presented. However, they claim, yes, everything that I did say is correct. So we know what we're up against.